Close your eyes. Take a breath. Imagine a beam of light emanating from your forehead. Imagine the buzzing energy it generates, the tingle it creates on your skin. Now follow that beam as it shines across the room, through walls, and out of your home, gaining speed as it flies away from you, passing through all in its path, until it travels into the atmosphere and beyond, past planets, past stars, to the very center of the universe. What do you see?
The program you are about to hear is fiction, science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction, fiction, fiction.
Supra sensuous salutations, all you cognonauts out there, and welcome to Exofathom, the show that dares to explore the outside reaches of understanding. I am your host, Nick, and I am joined, as always, by my two lovely co-hosts, Ayla. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing all right on this Monday. How about yourself?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. And we got Mike here. How you doing, Mike?
Oh, hanging in there. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, man. Yeah, you guys were just plugging along here in the good old state of California. We're happy to have a little bit of blue sky today. So
Just
yeah,
a little.
just a little, not too much.
You can kind of see it.
Yeah, it was peeking out of the smoke and stuff. So we got to be grateful for something, right? So
It was something.
it was something, definitely.
I took a picture and then I swapped my filters to make it bluer and just stared at it.
just for a little shred of happiness. Right?
Just a tiny bit.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much, you guys, for listening and joining us tonight. We have an interesting conversation for you this evening. And if you didn't read the intro, we are going to be talking about the third eye. And before we get into any of the nitty-gritty sort of information about the third eye and getting into some of the cultural beliefs in not just our culture, but in cultures across the world, I wanted to ask you guys before we started, how are your third eyes feeling tonight?
Tonight, I would say it's all the way closed up. Kind of had a rough day, rough weekend. But I've had times where I felt it, like I get that sight, that feeling of openness. But today, feeling a little shut today.
A little cloudy.
Yeah.
A
little smoky.
How about you, Mike? A little smoky.
A little bit lazy, but it's there. It's just slowly scanning the environment.
It's like the first 10 minutes of being awake, right?
No.
Yeah.
When you said
a little bit hazy.
When you said scanning, I just got a picture of like the eye of Sauron. I'm like, that would be your third eye.
Or like some sentry scanner, robot scanner. Just takes like the laser out and zzz, no life forms detected.
No energies in this area.
Go back to
going to sleep.
Pretty much.
How about you, Nick?
Well,
how's your third eye?
Probably a little bit blocked too. I think, I've had kind of a little bit of brain haze for the past couple days. Probably has to do with the air quality and all that. But certainly brain haze. And I think, not to get too much into the outside world, because on Exofathom, we're on our own planet. But, just that the long slog of the past 6 months has definitely started to maybe shut my third eye a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, this happened and that happened. Okay, I got this. And then something happens and you're like, okay, I got that. And then I think the fires just, because I know a lot of folks have been using nature to stymie some of the emotions that have been coming out over everything. I really was loving my bike rides and my archery in this outdoor range. So not being able to do that, I think definitely gives you more of that cabin fever feeling, which definitely can cloud the third eye. I mean, yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like it gives you incentive to close your third eye, so you don't have to look at it.
Right. You don't have to feel what's going on around you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think there's some merit into that for sure. But for our audience who might be wondering, what in the heck are we talking about? I'll give you just a brief little definition of what the third eye is, and then I'm going to ask a couple more questions, and then we're going to get into examples through history and culture about what they thought the third eye was. And then I got some pretty cool photos to show you guys as well. So we will get into that towards the end of the episode. But for now, the intro to the third eye, it's also called the mind's eye or the inner eye, is a mystical and esoteric concept of a speculative invisible eye, usually depicted as located on the forehead, which improves perception beyond ordinary sight. Now, just from that, I want to ask you guys, have you ever had a perception that didn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense? And I'm not necessarily saying like a psychic premonition, but maybe just a feeling or an intuition that you might have had without any sort of base or merit that ended up being correct.
I mean, I spent a little time working in customer service, and it's just really funny because there's certain people who they're not necessarily difficult, but their energy will leave you feeling really like just lacking, like just very draining. And again, not necessarily difficult. It's just, well, maybe they're a little difficult, but there's like a there's like a way about it where it's more than just someone who's having a bad day and being difficult. It's like this something else. And just like one little anecdote, I was walking my dog a couple weeks ago, and I passed a woman, and I just don't know why, but the minute I saw her, there was this like ugh factor, and like she just was a normal woman, but something about her vibe, I turned around. Even Indy was like, oh.
Well, you tend to be a magnet for psychic vampirism, so I can understand that.
I'm gonna look into that. I wonder what that
weirdos
is.
come out of the woodwork anytime you step outside. So
I do have some crazy stories.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat as Ayla as far as attracting psychic vampires or emotional vampires. Maybe not like the very second I walk out the door. I got some walls up.
I got some defenses.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the ones that I really like most are when I'm kind of out by myself exploring, and you get that gut instinct that you don't want to go into this area for whatever reason, and that perception leads me out of that area, and I don't want to find out what happens if I don't listen to that intuition.
Yeah, it's probably good for you to do so.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you might as well just be safe than sorry.
Yeah, so true.
Mike went out on a hike. What happened? No one heard from him again.
That's right. The cougars got to him.
Yep.
Not what you're thinking about, folks.
Who knows anymore, man?
Right. Could be a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. But yeah, I think, I was trying to think of this for myself, and, I don't know if anything pops up specifically for me, like a big whoa moment, but there have definitely been times where I've thought of people and they've either texted me or called me. Now, I don't necessarily think that that's any sort of like superpower, but I definitely feel like there is some sort of intuition there going on, because it has happened to me at least a handful of times in which I've thought of somebody, and then all of a sudden I get a text from them or something like that, or a contact, they reach out, and so in that sense, I think that, I've definitely experienced some sort of interdimensional phenomenon, perhaps.
I've paralleled those experiences too. I wonder if it's just like that unconscious collective that you're
Mm.
tapping into. Like
Yeah, I kind of think that might be.
it's just like a little ping to somebody else, and it just gets sent up to that network and pulled back down.
Right.
I don't see it.
That's so funny. Well, and I used to work at this the acupuncture clinic, and these are great things actually. FYI, people, it's across the world. They're just acupuncture clinics where they treat a couple people in one room, and they're all like sliding scale. But it was funny because you have a high volume of clients, and sure enough, anytime we would think about somebody that hadn't been in for a while, and we knew they were going through something or we were worried about them, that week they would pop up on the schedule. And it was like each person that worked at that clinic could feel that same, like they had the same experiences. So I mean, I definitely feel that humans have some of that like honeybee hive mind thing going on where like you can definitely reach out and connect one another, but it has to be like under the right circumstances, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's something kind of like similar to sympathetic attunement. That's kind of the way I think of that. And
Mm.
to me, I don't know if it can be actually forced. It seems kind of spontaneous, or at least I don't know of any ways in order to focus that. Now, maybe we get into this episode, we find that there are practices in which you can expand your third eye, but at least in my experience, it has been a lot more random than it has been deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So let's just get into some examples of the third eye throughout history. And each little paragraph I have, we're going to take a break and I'm going to ask you guys a couple questions. And then any remarks that you might have about the material, please feel free to express yourselves. But we're going to start with the Dharmic spiritual traditions of India. And the third eye refers to the ajna or brow chakra. The third eye refers to the gate that leads to the inner realms and spaces of higher consciousness. Are you clicking, Ayla?
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. No problem. In spirituality, the third eye often symbolizes a state of enlightenment or the evocation of mental images having deeply personal, spiritual, and or psychological significance. The third eye is often associated with religious visions, clairvoyance, and the ability to observe chakras and auras, precognition, and out-of-body experiences. People who are said to have the capacity to utilize their third eyes are sometimes known as seers. In Hinduism and Buddhism, the third eye is said to be located around the middle of the forehead, slightly above the junction of the eyebrows, representing the enlightenment one achieves through meditation. Hindus also place the tilaka between the eyebrows as a representation of the third eye, which is also seen as an expressions of Shiva. Buddhists regard the third eye as the eye of consciousness, representing the vantage point from which enlightenment beyond one's physical sight is achieved. Now, Ayla, if
Yeah.
your third if your third eye was wide open, what color do you think your aura would be?
Wow. The first word that came to mind was just orange.
Oh,
Yeah, because I think that I tend to be pretty chipper and yellow most of the time. But I do get really irritable. And so I think that would be
low
like a
redness.
red.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So I think the yellow and the red gives me this like orangey, dusky color, especially right now since the
Like a
smoke's.
burnt umber.
Yeah, it's kind of how I feel. Like a burnt umber.
What about you, Mike?
Um, I would hope for like a deep blue.
Very contemplative.
Yeah, and just internalize everything and try to push that out in a calm, thoughtful way.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. And now the police are coming after you. So
Yeah, come and get me.
Well, that third eye, a little bit
Yeah.
too blue.
a little bit too open.
Too blue.
Too blue.
But you know what's funny is you mentioned blue, and now suddenly I'm like, yeah, I do feel calmer now. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Well, the color blue is definitely supposed to invoke calm in people too. I think we'll do an episode sometime about the concept of color and how it's applied to psychology. I think
Well, and
that would be a
it's
very what's
yeah.
that?
Oh, I was like roaring to piggyback on
Oh
that,
yeah.
but no, it's true. Like in my office here, I have a red rug, and like the table's kind of red and orangey. It's like a bright room. But then in
Mhm,
the bedroom, I've been cultivating things that are blue. So we
mhm,
have this like blue rug. Um, I guess like blues and whites, but just like cooling kind of natural colors. And
mhm,
at first we had stuff in every room, and then I started color coding each one, which is kind of nice because if you're wanting that calm feeling, you go to the bedroom, or if you want that energized feeling, you go to the office. So
mhm.
I think
Yeah,
it works.
I think so too. If you could pinpoint where consciousness is on yourself, where do you think it would be?
I still think it's the heart. I think that there's something where, like, at least in acupuncture, the heart, like all the points meet there. And I know like recent studies have shown that like the heart has similar capacities to the brain, but they're not really that studied.
Mm,
Um, and then if you think about people who have like heart transplants and things like that, there's a deep feeling of loss. Like I heard one person, he had a heart transplant, and he said he was grieving because he knew his heart was in the trash somewhere, his broken
mm,
heart, and like it's just got to be so weird. And I think, yeah, if I had a foreign heart, I wouldn't really feel like myself. So I know that, like, thinking comes from the brain, but something about the heart to me just seems like that's where it all comes together.
yeah. Well, and I understand the concept of, thinking in the brain, but, necessarily consciousness doesn't have to be just situated in your brain. I think that, like you're saying, you can have a certain level of consciousness in your heart and even in your gut, like
It's
Mike was saying,
true.
following his gut about sort of the shady place he might have to, be away from, like in order to not come to any sort of injury. Um, I think that that's definitely a possibility. Mike, what about you? Where is your consciousness located?
Well, in meditation, I don't know if would call this uh, I guess the weight of consciousness, but there's a pressure point uh, right where my unibrow is.
Mm,
Yeah, right in the middle there. I would guess that's where it emits from because you have to temper the heart. Like I don't, the heart is a part of consciousness, but it's not the best place to externalize your energy from. I think
mm,
that should be the job of the at least a bit more rational. So for me, it moves it physically in my
mm.
interpretation to like right there, right between the eyebrows.
Well, no, it makes sense that you keep it covered with the unibrow that you mentioned.
Yeah. It's very,
But no, I think
it's
you're
very
right.
private, Ayla. Jeez.
It's my sacred unibrow.
Sacred. But I mean, I could see that. I mean, like, there's got to be a reason we have these source points in different spots. And
Mm,
I think it's interesting that you kind of mentioned the other, because I was thinking, like, with the heart, is that, yeah, like there's something to be said for the consciousness that relates to you and yourself, and then there's
mm,
something about the consciousness that extends beyond yourself. Um,
mhm.
and I think like eventually they're kind of the same, but when we're in these bodies, there's that understanding of separateness.
Right.
And I think too, though, like just from a defensive position, like if you lead with your heart, like I'd rather get poked in the eye than get poked in the heart.
And
This is
then
probably why
really
all the
poked in the
vampires.
third eye, just poked in the forehead. So might as well.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
This must be why all the vampires flock to me. I'm just like
Yeah.
care, bear, love.
Mm, right. Well, it
Uh,
is a danger of definitely being an open individual. That's for sure. It's interesting to me because, like, I would definitely agree with you, Mike, that I believe that what I would consider Nick is in between the eyes somewhere, behind it. But if I'm thinking about like the other me, where it's like this, I guess we could say like the spiritual me. I feel like kind of like I'm hovering just a couple feet above and behind my body. So it's kind of like a third person video game sort of thing
Yeah.
That's
where,
creepy.
yeah,
That's like
it
alien
does.
stuff.
But it's weird though, because that's how like I kind of identify with myself as not necessarily just me, but this, this like third person camera angle view of myself.
The God eye view. There's a
Yeah.
the I'd go through the same thing. I tend to do it in hindsight in practice, but
Mhm.
disassociate, kind of astral project, if you will, or like, get outside of yourself and rewatch the situation.
Right. Yes.
And you can actually, you don't always have to be to the top right. You can move around in that space, but it requires your third eye to be able to reconstruct any set you've gone through in your life.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
I don't
that
know.
is.
Yeah, no, I get you. Like, I maybe it's alien. I don't know, but
Maybe, but
It's interesting though. I recently was thinking to myself that like I think I get that feeling if I'm like in danger, that like
Mm.
outsideness. So I can see it. I mean, I guess you could probably access that at any time, but I know for me, I've only ever really felt that when there was something bad going on, and I just like, bloop,
Yeah.
my mind and consciousness is just like not going to be here for that.
It kind of reminds me of like the cartoons where like something gets so scared that it like jumps out of its body and runs away.
Totally.
Yeah.
I have like in times of extreme like physical danger, for some reason I click in. Like I could be the most spaciest person,
Mm.
but for example, when I got robbed at gunpoint, my mind. When I was 16. My mind was off in another place because that day a childhood friend overdosed on heroin,
Mm.
or I found out that day he passed away. So mine's completely not in the situation. Walking home, and this guy or kid pulls a gun on me, and everything just sinks in. I get really calm,
Mhm.
and I've pondered that moment, and I'm not too sure why. And like, um,
The call of the void, man.
Yeah.
probably details kick in real fast, like arm positions where like everything just gets processed so much faster. But there's a strange, serene calm about it, and I have
Right.
no idea. But maybe it is the call of the void.
Maybe a little bit, like this is the concept, you've made friends with the danger before, so it's like when you see it knocking on the door again, you're not exactly surprised.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's move on into the more Taoist traditions. So, in Taoism and many traditional Chinese religious sects, such as Chan, called Zen in Japanese, the third eye training involves focusing attention on the point between the eyebrows with the eyes closed, and while the body is in various qigong positions. The goal of this training is to allow students to tune into correct vibration of the universe and gain a solid foundation on which to reach a more advanced meditative state. Taoism teaches that the third eye, also called the mind's eye, is situated between the two physical eyes and expands up to the middle of the forehead when opened. Taoism asserts that the third eye is one of the main energy centers of the body located at the sixth chakra, forming a part of the main meridian, the line separating left and right hemispheres of the body. In Taoist alchemical traditions, the third eye is the frontal part of the upper dantian, which is the upper cinnabar field, and is given the evocative name muddy pellet. Interesting. Muddy pellet. That's kind of strange. Um,
It's
well, this kind of just brings me to mind of the, like, like we've been talking about with our CIA series, Ayla.
that
This
we need to
tie this
finish.
Yeah, we do.
I don't
Every
even
time I say
remember.
that. Yeah. I wasn't going to say it this time, but you said it this time, so okay.
I got you.
Yes.
It'll be done when it's done. Don't worry.
That's right. It'll be finished when it's finished. But yeah, the correct vibration. So like the kind of the being able to vibrate into the universe to gain a solid foundation and reach more advanced meditative states. So this is like the concept of clicking in, right? Or clicking out. That we used to talk about in the CIA series, folks. If you have not listened to those yet, they're actually really entertaining. And there's a concept in the series that talks about this ability to vibrate the brain at a frequency sympathetic to the main frequency of the universe in order to click out, as it were. And it seems to me that this Taoist tradition is kind of the same sort of concept, especially when it integrates the Qigong postures, which is Qigong is a slow form of martial arts. It's more of an internal martial art about breathing and movement, and the reinvigoration of qi through your body. So it's interesting to me that these types of practices have been around for so long, and so that leads me to give you guys a question, which is, if you could vibrate into the universal field, what piece of information would you want to bring back?
That is a good question. Into the universal field.
I would want to bring back like the cosmology of everything, like just the whole structure of how our reality and any other reality outside of this works.
And what would that look like? Would that be like a 3D model or math or what?
For me personally, I would hope that it would be a 2D graph, like the information was that simple, but probably have to be in a higher dimension.
Probably
going to be like a flower petal, and you're going to look at it and be like, no, dude.
What is this?
Really, this is really important. I need to know this.
But I mean, if it was in some mathematical language that wasn't expressed by humans, if it was in anything else, I think it would be acceptable, but more of a challenge for me to try to decode for other humans.
Right, of course. Yeah, what about you, Ayla? If you were able to vibrate into the frequency of the universe, what piece of information would you want to bring back?
I think maybe, well, I don't know. It's hard because it's like kind of what was Mike was saying. It's like, in what form do I get to bring it back? If it was something like physical, I don't know how this would be possible, but I'd love to bring back the Akashic records, because I just think it would be so fascinating to be able to see what really went down in all instances throughout human experience. But if it was something more like knowledge based, then I would want knowledge of sustained energy, not anything like, like some sort of renewable energy source. Like, I don't know, something fancy. I could come up with an example, but I mean, I don't know which way to go.
No, I get it. Like, yeah. Some sort of way in which to harness energy in a way that would benefit humanity. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. I mean, I don't really know what I would want to bring back, but I really would want to. There's two things that really bug me about the universe, and one is what was happening before the Big Bang, which is, I think, everybody bugs everybody. But the other one is, I am. I don't know why I'm convinced this, and there's probably no science to back this up. So please, astrophysicists, don't be upset at me when I say this, but I am so convinced that black holes lead to white holes. And that black holes are just the trash compactors for the universe, or the garbage disposals for the universe, and it's all that serves is to just disperse matter out into another point of the universe. And that hasn't really been proven. Obviously, white holes are very hypothetical, and there's been no evidence to suggest that they exist. But I just can't shake the feeling that black holes exist to just like mulch up all the planets around it and then shoot it out somewhere else in the universe. So I would want proof on that. just to prove a point.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I think it's a good point to prove. I mean,
yeah,
It
you
is.
know, it would just give me a little bit of peace of mind. I don't think that there would be anything really gleaned from it, but it would give me peace of mind for sure.
It's true.
Uh,
Oh, and just to go back real
Oh,
quick,
yeah.
because for our listeners, we've known Mike for a very long time, and that's not the first time we've heard that story. So I just want to be careful. Like, Mike, I'm really sorry that happened to you, and we've talked about this before, but I just kind of felt like we glossed over that really crazy, and I just like it's been
Wait,
we've been talking.
What
Oh,
happened to me?
you're mugging.
Have you you grew up in LA, right? Like that's
Yes, I've been held at gunpoint.
yeah, we go through that.
It's just the Tuesday here in LA.
Yeah, what do you?
Well, actually, it wasn't a mugging. It was it was two blacked out SUVs, and one in front and one in back, and there was like 4 people hanging outside of each one with like AR.
What is this, a Michael Bay movie?
I'm not kidding. This happened on freaking Pico in West LA. It was like at like 1 in the morning. It was the weirdest thing. But
It's
anyway,
probably a SWAT team or something.
no. They were hollering at each other for a while, and then the cops started to show up. But yeah, no. But anyway, but to the audience and the listeners, yeah, we talk about this stuff, and we do need to have a near-death experience discussion, because I think all those moments, like where your life flashes before your eyes and you click in, something's going on there.
But it also is a chance for that spontaneous moment for your third eye to come alive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the shock of the moment is, of course, the shock of the moment, but over time you can gain wisdom from those traumatic experiences.
Yeah, it's like it's the Magneto model, right?
Yeah.
Like
Magneto.
You build your third eye. You keep it open through those traumatic experiences, and it strengthens it.
Well, and I think you have to be in it, though, because like in that particular instance, I popped out of my actual awareness. But like I've had other times where I've been in it the whole time, and I can feel like the experience was a bit different. Kind of like you were saying, everything slowed down. I feel like there's 2 ways to experience it. Maybe.
Like everything's just on autopilot. It just happens.
Yeah.
And the time dilations.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to say that because I just felt like you dropped this really like scary story, and we just moved on. So
it was about clicking in and clicking out.
Okay.
We're obviously talking to him right now, Ayla, so he's fine. All right.
Or the program I left behind.
Oh.
Called the thirdeye.exe.
There you go.
All of the third eye. I love it.
All right. Let's see. Now I'm gonna get into Miss Blavatsky. Her name keeps coming up in our conversations too.
Blavatsky?
She's that witchy lady that started like the occult craze in the early 1900s. You know?
Can we replace malarkey with Blavatsky and make it a shirt?
No.
It's like there's gonna be a shirt after every episode. It just has to be.
I don't know who owns her likeness, so I'm not gonna.
I'm gonna look her up. I need to see what she looks like.
So adherents of the Theosophist H.P. Blavatsky, have suggested that the third eye is in fact the partially dormant pineal gland, which resides between the 2 hemispheres of the brain. Reptiles and amphibians sense light via the third parietal eye, a structure associated with the pineal gland, which serves to regulate the circadian rhythms, and for navigation, as it can sense the polarization of light, which is interesting. C.W. Leadbeater, what a name, thought that by extending the etheric tube from the third eye, it is possible to develop microscopic or telescopic vision, hence the cold open. It has been asserted that by Stephen Phillips that the third eye's microscopic vision is capable of observing objects as small as quarks. According to this belief, humans had in far ancient times an actual third eye in the back of their head with a physical and spiritual function. Over time, as humans evolved, the third eye atrophied and sunk into what today is known as the pineal gland. Rick Strassman has hypothesized that the pineal gland, which maintains light sensitivity, is responsible for the production and release of DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine, and an entheogen, which he believes possibly could be excreted in large quantities at the moments of birth and death. Now, there's a lot to get into on that one, but I just wanted to point out that, yes, Helen Blavatsky is an interesting woman that we'll have to do an episode on all of her own. She kind of created the New Age movement and a lot of the more occultic beliefs that came into the West in the 1900s. So I think that she'll have a really interesting episode on her own. But I thought it was interesting. They talk about how the third eye, or at least the pineal gland, is responsible for the circadian rhythms, and also the concept of releasing DMT before and after death. Makes me kind of wonder, do you think that the third eye could be a gateway into the dreamscape or into another reality altogether?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can see it being the biological base for like a heaven or a hell. And DMT is a very strong psychedelic, so your brain naturally produces it. I could definitely see having very vivid and strong hallucinations and going into that dreamscape.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because even in dreams and while you're asleep, you do release a little bit of DMT, which might explain the surrealism of dreams. So yeah, I think that that's really interesting. Ayla, how disturbing is it that we could have had an eye in the back of our head?
I mean, yeah, no, I don't like it because now I'm suddenly like, But it makes me think of like, the stories where you have like in the Matrix, he reaches to the back of his head and like that's where that plug is. And then same thing like with your central nervous system, there's the brain and then you have the brain stem, and that's all of your like basic functioning that ties into your spinal cord. And I've had a lot of concussions. I've seen a lot of neurologists in my life. And I can tell you that like we do not know enough about how the central nervous system and the brain works. Like we know some, but then when you start getting into like these different chemicals and the communication between synapses and amino acids and all that stuff, like it gets really complex. And yeah, so I mean, that to be said, we do have a little brain in the back, of our skull. That tends to be a little bit more like lizard brain. But that could also explain intuition, and that could be a gateway into the dreamscape and what we can't really verbalize, but we feel in our bones,
Yeah, I would definitely agree.
Also, what is DMT? Is it like a neurotransmitter, or is it a chemical? Like when it says release DMT, where is it? What's happening? Like,
Mike, you want to take that?
Oh yeah, here let me just be a chemist through.
There you go.
Well, it's a neurochemical, but it's
neurochemical.
something that your body produces naturally, like adrenaline or anything like that.
Serotonin, maybe.
No, all controlled by the pineal gland, I believe.
It's so weird. And the pineal gland, that's like embedded deep inside your
It's literally
brain,
in the middle of your brain. Yeah.
So it'd be like under the corpus callosum, which is the bridge that connects the two hemispheres.
Yes,
together.
Underneath that.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, think about it. Like, they have these studies of people who have like brain damage, and so they're using, like, basically, like, let's say they cut the corpus callosum because a part of the left hemisphere is dead. They're going to lean on the right one, but all these weird things happen with your perception and the controls of your body, and everything's like all reversed. So if you think like if that's where all that communication is happening, and then directly under that you have something that's tapped into your lizard brain, your central nervous system, and it's like shooting out all the stuff. Now I'm just talking crazy about brain, but okay. I just was thinking like the placement's really interesting. It's the heart of your brain, and it would be located right behind where your third eye would be technically, because your occipital nerves are going to be behind your eye, but go up a bit.
The eyeball in the back of the head too. I mean, that explains my mom. Like my mom always had eyes in the back of her head. Like, she could see me doing
Explains all
everything.
moms. Yeah.
Yeah, almost.
Um,
It's very developed.
yeah. It just goes back in after the kid turns 18.
That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and it's interesting now that we've kind of had Blavatsky introduce us to the concept of the pineal gland. We're going to get a little bit deeper into that and kind of basically parallel it with the Egyptian eye of Horus, which is an interesting concept. So I'm going to read this little paragraph here, and then I'm going to show you guys a picture so we can illustrate it better for you. So many are familiar with the Eye of Ra and the Eye of Horus from ancient Egyptian iconography. Aside from the eye's striking resemblance to a lateral view of the pineal gland with the brain, these depictions in Egyptian hieroglyphics are always similar. In addition to its lack of counterpart, it was often drawn in the center of a forehead of sarcophagi. Another reference to the location of the pineal gland, mirroring Hindu mythology, is that a snake emerges from the center of the forehead, also on pharaoh sarcophagi. Egyptians regarded the snake auspiciously as well, associating it with wisdom. And now I want to show you guys, because Ayla, you were talking about the positioning of this. And in here in this infographic, for the people who are listening, you have a cross section of a brain right next to the eye of Horus. And in the middle of that cross section of the brain, you can see the pineal gland and what constitutes the pineal gland, or the thalamus, which is like the eyeball. And then you have the corpus callosum, which is the eyebrow of the eyeball. And then you have the medulla oblongata, which would be the little thing that goes down, and the hypothalamus goes straight down. So it's really interesting, and especially in the second picture below here, if you guys see that, that cross section of the brain, and then referencing it to the eye of Horus, I mean, you can see a similarity there. Now, it may not be the exact copy of what we were expecting, but it is very striking. I don't know what you guys think.
Definitely striking. I forgot about this comparison. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting. These correlations, man, give me chills.
I do get a little worried though that it's just my brain being a caveman brain.
Finding
like,
patterns.
Yeah, finding patterns and something that's not exactly there. But the correlation is extremely close. And the most important part to the body, according to the brain, is the brain. It will eat your heart to keep itself alive in times of extreme starvation. So I can see why it would give us this image of an eye, like an image of itself to hold in high regard.
Right.
So I can see both sides, where it's either like our brain searching for patterns, or like a spiritual connection to our biology.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really interesting too when they talk about what they put on the foreheads of the sarcophagi. So when you think about like the snake that comes out of the forehead of the pharaohs, I never really thought about that, but that kind of parallels like the Kundalini and the cosmic serpent, and like the serpent from the Garden of Eden. This analog for knowledge coming out of the forehead, which I think is very interesting. Then subsequently, you also get the Eye of Horus painted on the foreheads of pharaohs as well. So to me, it's like, I think they knew something, but I mean, how would you think? I mean, do you think it's just because they were cutting open a lot of brains and looking at stuff?
It would have to be like that collective thinking of humans. And I think with all of our technology, all of our distractions too, it's a lot harder now to do, if it can be done, versus back then when you didn't have so many distractions, so many things to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, I think there is something to be said for the fact that they did, they did mummification, but from what I know according to Tales from the Dark Side, they would pull them out of your nose.
Oh yeah.
But I wonder if that was a specific that they did it that way, because you could just chop the face open and like scoop out the brain. Maybe they tried that and then they saw this pattern. And kind of like what you were saying, Mike, what came first? If it was kind of like the caveman analogy, did they have the symbol and then they discovered it, or did they discover that and base the symbol on it, or is there no correlation at all?
Right.
Um, But I mean, it
There's
is
always,
interesting. Oh yeah. Well, I was just
there,
thinking the meaning of the eye.
you know, like it is sacred because there's like even if you remove all the imagery, I think just naturally we build up this image of an eye. Like, but I think this is just something that occurs in people naturally. Like, uh, you don't you don't need any cultural references. You're going to get somebody that draws an eyeball. That means the same thing as a third eye. And I
Mhm.
think every one of us has that thing.
Certainly, yeah. I would definitely agree, but it also there's a little bit of extra stuff here that I mean, I don't know what the little hangy downy things are on the eyeball.
The hanging down things.
Yeah, I mean, unless they were just styling their makeup like that back in ancient Egypt, which they could have been. I mean, it's quite possible that they were doing designs, with their eye makeup as well. So,
This definitely makes me want to like read the Book of the Dead and get like really into it, because all these different things, like when I was doing the Familiars episode, I mean, my gosh, you can go from one story to hearsay to a case to a fictional character to a real character, and you can just keep digging. And you know, again, I know correlation doesn't equal causation, but I do think it is interesting to kind of explore more what the Egyptians thought of this. And even we
mhm.
could do an Egyptian episode.
Oh yeah,
Um, and maybe not just Egyptian, because there's so much richness there. It could be like mummies and the eye. Um, but one
Egyptian
thing,
spiritualism, maybe.
yeah, and one thing that came to mind was this idea of the weight of a brain. I don't know. I think this is real. Or like if you measure a brain, well, I don't know how you would measure a brain. I don't know. Am I wrong? There's something that I heard that like when you die, your brain loses weight. But I don't know, how do you measure a brain when you're not dead? So that can't be right.
Yeah, I think I've heard about this before, and it's like, uh, I couldn't reference the study, but I've heard a study like that before, where it's like they've studied a body, moments after somebody passes, and they notice that there is some sort of weight loss to that person, but it's not necessarily on a very, I don't know if it's on like a very measurable scale as far as pounds and stuff, but it could be in like the grams or something like that. But yeah, I do know what study you're talking about. I would have to pull it up somehow, and I just wouldn't even know where to start looking. So
Yeah. But well, I guess that's what I mean too. Like, well, yeah, I'm probably just going into the weeds now, but that came to mind. I'll have to look into it as well.
well, yeah, and then there were many people who kind of became fascinated with the concept of consciousness and the concept of something in our brains being responsible for the consciousness that we experience. And one of those people is the very famous René Descartes.
I knew you were going to do that.
Oh yeah. Who's the 17th century philosopher and scientist, and he was
Oh.
highly interested in anatomy and physiology. He discussed the pineal gland both in his first book, The Treatise of Man, written before 1637, but only published posthumously in 1662 and 1664, and in his last book, The Passions of the Souls, in 1649. And he regarded it as the principal seat of the soul and the place in which all our thoughts are formed, quote unquote. In the Treatise of Man, Descartes describes conceptual models of man, namely creatures created by God, which consist of two ingredients, a body and a soul. In the Passions, Descartes split man up into a body and a soul, and emphasized that the soul is joined to the body by a certain very small gland situated in the middle of the brain, brain's substance and suspended above the passage through which the spirits in the brain's anterior cavities communicate with those in its posterior cavities. Descartes attached significance to the gland because he believed that he believed it to be the only section of the brain to exist as a single part rather than one half of a pair. Most of Descartes' basic anatomical and physiological assumptions were totally mistaken, and not by modern, not only by modern standards, but in light of what we already knew at this time. So basically, poo-pooing his ideas, and he was obviously a little bit strange when he's saying that basically spirits are communicating through your brain, and the pineal gland is kind of like the little, the little traffic control for the spirits communicating in your brain.
You win some, you lose some.
Sure, he did. He did. I mean, it's very good that he came up with cogito ergo sum, because if he didn't, this is what we would be thinking of him as, the weird brain guy. And so I got to ask, like, was he just cutting up brains left and right, do you think?
Oh man, I think there was a certain period of time where doctors did things that were horrific.
Mm-hmm.
I was choosing horrifying and horrific. Horrific.
Horrific.
Hold on. Am I the only one here that's bought a cadaver to experiment on a brain?
Yeah, I haven't done that since 1847.
Yeah, I've held a brain before and got in a lot of trouble with my Native American family. But yeah, and a real brain is like, it's gross. It's really gross. I don't know. It's like
It's just fat.
think of like bologna, and then make a brain out of bologna. It's that like, but it's thick, like it's dense. Ugh.
Does your brain have a first name?
No,
That was a bad joke. Sorry.
That's an amazing joke. What do you mean?
I just got it.
Yeah.
The spirits in my brain just got it.
They did. But no, I'm thinking, like, obviously Descartes was very concerned with consciousness and what the heck was going on inside the brain. I have to think that he was purchasing cadavers, or maybe not even purchasing them, but he was definitely cutting open some brains for sure.
So gross.
It's just a hobby. I mean,
It's just a hobby. It's innocent. They were dead already, so
yeah, don't worry about it.
Well, I
It's in
think
the name of science.
I've heard some horrific stories from doctors today. Let me think. This one might have come from my high school teacher, who was talking about friends of his that went on to med school.
Mhm.
And like, you get assigned a cadaver for like the semester, I think, and you work
Ew.
on it. Mm-hmm.
Whole
And he's-
semester.
I think so. But they keep it like refrigerated and stuff,
Yeah,
and you close it
still.
up and open it and you dissect different parts. But he said they would do things like one of them cut the testicles off of one and put it in a closet where, like, where you have to like reach up and pull down on the thing to turn the light on. But they tied balls at the end, and then another student dragged a corpse out to a field and took a picture with it and made that their Christmas cards. So do not donate your bodies to science, people. Just don't do it.
That sounds like something some med students would do.
That is the most brutal shit I've ever heard in my
It's
entire life.
awful. And I trust this, like, he was not making it up, because then another friend went to med school, and I can't remember who it was, but I know that they had some pretty, not as terrible, but they were pretty bad. And then just as like an FYI, because I'm a donor, but I didn't know that, like, if you're just a donor, you could have your body donated to science afterwards. So there's a website where you can go and say, like,
Don't
no
touch
science, but yeah, but I can save a life. There's like, yeah, like I think I went on. I said, you can take anything but my skin and my eyes. I don't know why, that just freaks me out. And then I said, but do not donate my body to science. So, the more you know.
Yeah, it's probably for the best.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, that kind of concludes the pineal gland angle. I wanted to get into one smaller discussion, kind of more about the symbolism of what the third eye might signify in much more ancient cultures, and that's kind of the imagery of the pine cone, which is interesting because a lot of my reading kind of pointed me in the same direction of the pine cone imagery, and I thought that was really interesting. So I bring this, and I have a couple more photos to show you guys. This one will be the first one, and this is the Anunnaki, which is the Babylonian gods, basically. And what has he got in his hand there? What do you see?
A little pine cone.
It's got a little pine cone in his hand. Can you believe it? Oh,
Why? And he's got a Rolex.
He's got a Rolex on. He's got a nice watch.
Fancy.
Yeah, I just noticed that he has a watch.
Why
I'm
does
actually
a
more
luxury
concerned
spaceship.
about the watch now.
I know. Could be a
Like, for real,
bracelet.
he's got a watch on. No, that's a watch, man.
That's a nice time.
But yeah, so this is something that I saw basically in much more ancient societies, and then kind of carried over by religious practice and all of that kind of stuff, and it's really interesting to me. So many portrayals of the Sumerian gods, I probably said Babylonian, I apologize, it's Sumerian. The Sumerian gods depict a pine cone extended in one hand. These gods are believed to be representations of the Anunnaki, or an ancient extraterrestrial visitor race, and their ability to access the pineal gland for its consciousness expanding abilities. Pine cones can be found in ancient Greek mythology on the staff of Dionysus, or his Roman iteration Bacchus. The pinecone staff with snakes wrapped around it is also carried by Osiris in Egyptian lore, and in Cambodian temples in Angkor Wat bear a striking resemblance to the pinecones, and there is even a massive pinecone statue in the Vatican, or at the Vatican, originally situated next to a temple for the Egyptian god Isis in ancient Rome. These ancient ancestors clearly had a healthy awareness of our pineal gland, this obviously speculation, and the mysticism surrounding its connection to the higher levels of consciousness. Its pinecone shape adds to the mysterious symbolism seen across cultures. It comes as no surprise that the pinecone also forms a sacred geometric pattern from the Fibonacci's golden ratio. So yeah, I thought that was really fascinating because I have seen pinecone imagery before, and it would be interesting to me if we were, you got to think of Sumerian culture is very ancient, very old, but they had some really strange mythology, and this is straight out of Sumerian culture, like this Birdman thing with wings and a Rolex on, holding a pine cone
And like a Gucci bag.
and like some weird Gucci bag, and then he looks like he has some knives right here in his belt, like he's about to stab some people or something.
Oh yeah.
But
Also, who carries a pine cone like that?
right, unless you're plucking it out of somebody's brain, right?
Oh my god!
Yeah,
Or
like
putting it into somebody's brain.
or putting it into somebody's brain. Thank you very much, Mike.
Okay.
Kind of what I was going to get to, but yes, Ayla.
No, I just, my heckles go up anytime the Anunnaki come up because, and I've told you this story before. Stop! No. Okay, so like, I don't know, 8 years ago or something, I got a library card, and it was the Santa Monica Library. And I remember I rented one book, and I got a lot of late fees for it, so I never went back. And then like a year later, I got a late fee notification. I called them. I said, no, I only did one book and I paid them up. And they said, well, no, you checked out a book and you never brought it back. And I asked what the book was. And it was something about the Anunnaki. And I never took that book out. I've never read that book. I don't know who got my, like, why? But it was like one of those things where, like, I don't know if you go through life and every now and then, like, a weird little situation pops up, like an entanglement, and you don't know if, like, you're supposed to, like, glean some sort of information from that or just, chalk it up to happenstance or whatever. But I always remembered that because when I looked it up, I was like freaked out. So I don't know. I don't know.
Time traveler.
I know. Oh my God. I don't know. Ugh. It's
Yeah.
freaky. And they're freaky gods.
On that Eye of Ra, though, it does look like there's a bit of another golden ratio happening there, too, which connects the pineal gland to Anunnaki as well, or connects that same symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Definitely.
And I didn't know that the Vatican had a pine cone.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into it. I got some more pictures to show you. So let me pull these up real quick. I apologize. I'm multitasking here, folks. So
What you doing?
1 second while I'm pulling up the pictures for you guys.
Okay.
So I'm
and hosting the show, and
I'm playing solitaire, and I just got no.
So I'll start out in the method in which they were brought up. So we'll talk about Dionysus first and Bacchus, which is the same god, just in the Roman iteration. So we have. Oops, sorry. Let me try that again. Technical difficulties, guys. I apologize.
I'm just thinking of so the snake is the sacred symbol coming out of the forehead. Almost implies that we are gods ourselves.
Right.
By being by utilizing our third eye. But if you try to run that logic up in Christianity, you're going to run into a lot of issues saying that you can achieve the same ambitions as God.
Yeah, they don't like that equivocation. Definitely not.
No. But it is like that being the tether and ultimately a vehicle to godhood is interesting through this serpent-like thing that sheds skin and stems from the pineal gland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And so here we go with Dionysus, which is the god of wine, revelry, and many other things, actually. Huh?
Why a pine cone? I just don't. I mean, like, look, I get it if it's like a bad drawing of a lotus flower, because a lotus flower that has so much good imagery. But a pine cone, a prickly, stupid pine cone, that just, I don't know.
We'll get into some of the reasons why I believe that that's the case. But
okay, because I've stepped on so many pine cones and kicked them, and I let my dog chew on it, and I just think to myself, oh my God, have I been creating like sacrilege my entire life? And the Anunnaki are gonna get really mad.
The pine cone is then not necessarily okay. So there's we'll get
Sorry,
into
I go way off.
Jumping ahead to me.
It can also be a widowmaker. I mean, pine cones are powerful.
Yes, they are. They can drop on your head.
Chuck it at somebody and expect it to be like a big thing. Like, I smite you with pine cone. It just like drops to the floor, and you're like, oh, thought that was going to be more exciting.
I won't do that again.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of the pine cone imagery, as it relates to what the pineal gland, which is pine. Interesting. There goes those patterns you're creating in your head.
The old Batman riddles.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think it's actually because apparently the pineal gland kind of looks like a pine cone. So I don't know. I mean, I've never actually seen a pineal gland in my waking life before, so I wouldn't know. But
we just saw one that did not look like a pine cone. It just looks like.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with you, but it was not. It was also not plucked out from the brain, so maybe there's maybe it has this general teardrop-esque shape of a pine cone.
So creepy.
So I mean, that's definitely possible, but
the Greeks weren't lobotomizing people. I mean, I don't think looking for pine cones.
I mean, maybe not.
It's pretty interesting.
You're like, I could be wrong, but I don't think.
I don't think so. I don't think that was a thing that was high up on their to-do list.
But it's interesting too that they mentioned that the pine cone has it's a representation of the Fibonacci and sacred geometry, which would be kind of like a representation of the rubric for life. So I think that it's possible that they had some sort of understanding, even if it was just aesthetics, because I think that it definitely could have been just aesthetics. Like the way you look at a pine cone from the top down is very pleasing to the eye. So perhaps it was just part of that, and then we found out later that this also actually has a mathematical equation tied to it.
That sounds very Greek. Like they
Mm.
took this thing and they loved the form of it, so they found a mathematical representation. Found
Of
it to
why
be
it looks so
sacred.
pretty. Yeah.
Mhm.
I definitely could see them doing that for sure. For sure. Mike, I was going to ask you, since like this is Dionysus, why would you think that he would have a pine cone staff?
So my guess with that, if it relates back to that pineal gland, that center of emotion and like reverie and indulgence and all of that,
Mm,
if it's a symbol for that, then that's going to be the tip of the weapon, tip of the spear.
mm.
Is that touch of madness, that touch of uncontrollable passion.
Yeah, it's like the pure persona almost.
You know, like there's no thoughts of consequences. There's like
Right.
no regrets, anything like that. You're simply acting completely within your nature. And Nick, zoom in and enhance.
Yes, I know, right? I just did a really bad. There we go. Look at the pixels. This is why zooming in doesn't work,
Oh my
folks.
god, this brings me back to a Windows 95. I bought this.
I could not find a picture that was higher than like 500 megapixels.
Dude,
I
if
just
you
love
just
your
drop
comment.
like an 8-bit crawling in my skin MIDI, like
Yeah,
we're right back in the 90s. That we've done it. We've
right.
gone back to the old internet.
Totally.
We
Well, yeah.
time traveled with pine cones.
Yes.
Indeed. Well, so it's interesting too because you mentioned the like we just showed you the staff of Dionysus or Bacchus, and it bears a striking resemblance to let's see here, the staff of Osiris, which is another mystical staff that was from Egyptian culture. And I have so many freaking windows open right now. There we go. And so if you look at this kind of looks almost exactly like the same staff, except for there's actually now it's a caduceus. And it has the twin snakes wrapping around, or one snake. But the very far left image kind of looks like the image that Dionysus had on that piece of pottery. And so I wonder if this is a remnant of much older religions.
Am I the only one that thought that the gods were like kind of affluent? And here he's walking around with like a stick and a pine cone.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is a very worldly staff to carry, but that would make it even more interesting, right? Like, so if these gods could have staves of rubies and gold, why are they walking around with pine cone imagery?
That's true. Yeah, it is weird that there's so much pine cone action going on. I had no clue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so this is the other. I guess this is basically the it's called the Thyrsus. There we go. It's called the Thyrsus. And it's another form of caduceus, and this is from the more ancient Egyptian aesthetic. And I think it's interesting that it kind of wraps the caduceus in, and where the caduceus differs is that instead of the pine cone, you have wings. Which, I mean, ultimately, if we're thinking about it, could mean the same thing. The idea of wings meaning freedom, and the idea of the pine cone having like some sort of deeper knowledge about the existence of the universe kind of equates to the same concepts of like freedom and being transcendent above the material.
Yeah. It's also the sin as well.
Right. Yeah.
The original sin of knowledge. I do see. I guess so. You have like the tree of life, and the tree of life is common in lots of cultures, right? Like an ancient religion kind of thing. And a pine cone represents this consciousness. You can see that, like the pine cone that fell from the tree of life being sacred,
Mm-hmm.
with these crossing bands of like spirituality and intellectualism, maybe, or like whatever two halves of the human you want to split up. Um, but I could, yeah, like that sense of freedom or chasing that individual consciousness, that one pine cone, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a ramble. But
No, I think it's true. Yeah, I think there's something to that for sure. Ayla, you clicking over there? What's going on?
Well, I was just typing what tree pine cones come from, and they're pine trees.
Are you
Look,
yeah,
I just like to be sure before I go off on a tangent. Um,
okay? Go for it.
well, I mean, I wasn't going to say anything just yet. I was clicking. I was thinking about just like I'm going to look at some pine cones and just see if I can intuit any like
Okay.
extra, right? Well, because like Mike's talking a good talk about like the tree of knowledge, and the pine cone
Mhm.
is symbolic of that. So let's go to the source and let's look at some pine trees.
Well, and obviously the caduceus also illustrates something that we didn't really understand until we had modern science, which is the genetic double helix, which is also a very aesthetically pleasing shape, but it doesn't. It seems as though perhaps there's a connection between what we find aesthetically pleasing and what is existent underneath the surface of our senses. You know.
Yeah. And it's interesting that like at Christmas, for example, we would take a pine tree and bring it into our house, and we still decorate with pine cones. And there's tons of different trees
And
out there. I just
and what do Amanita muscara mushrooms grow under? Pine trees.
Oh, weird. That's
Mhm.
that Santa Claus mushroom, right?
Mhm.
Onomatopoeia shroom. What is it?
Amanita muscara. Yeah.
Amanita mascara.
Amanita
Amanita mascara.
muscara.
Mascara.
Yeah, say it like you're posh, and then you'll be good.
Oh, like you say, René Descartes.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough. That's weird.
Yeah.
That's weird.
There's a lot of strange mushroom symbolism, especially with the Christmas. I mean, I would love to do an episode about the mushroom Christmas conspiracy.
Mushroom
I need
Christmas.
to put that together in my mind a little bit more.
Dude, mushrooms are weird. Like, I have a friend that loves cooking with all kinds of fungi that he likes to find while he's hiking, which I'm like, dude, there's like, I don't know, are there like hundreds, if not thousands, of types of mushrooms? And some do some crazy, I mean, a lot of them are lethal. But like,
Yeah. But once you become a person that knows, I'm assuming this person lives in the Pacific Northwest. So
they do.
yeah, once you know that area, you know what grows in the area and what doesn't grow in the area, and then you know what's safe to eat and what's not safe to eat. So it's
I
actually not that
suppose.
hard of a science.
Except for the fact that we now have murder hornets in the Pacific Northwest. And what's to say somebody didn't pack a mushroom in their lunch sack and went hiking around, dropped it, and now we have a new species of mushroom previously unidentified, and you're going to start eating that?
Well, they wouldn't eat it if it wasn't identified. Nobody eats a mushroom they don't know.
I know,
It's like
but there
rule
are a
number
lot.
one.
But don't they look similar? Like if I look at a portobello
Not
that's
all the
like a
time.
baby, okay.
I mean,
I'm not a big mushroom fan.
I know.
It's hard for me to even put
It's because they have flesh. That's why.
ew.
Ew.
That's not part of it. Wait, ew.
Well, and mycelium aren't actually plants. They're like a hybrid between animal and plant.
What?
So like, yeah, fungus isn't actually a plant.
Ew, it's a fungus. That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it's like it's this own separate thing. It's not really animal. It's not really plant. It's this whole weird thing.
What the F? Okay, sorry. I mean, like, look, I already have a disdain for a lot of foods. Like, I am a very picky eater. Oh gosh, but I'm gonna have to look into that more. That's really freaky.
Well, and anybody who wants to learn more about mushrooms, I highly recommend Paul Stamets. He's basically the one of the leading authorities on mycology, which is the science of mushrooms. And he's really fascinating in his enthusiasm about mushrooms and how they save the ecosystem and how they're so integral to forest growth and plant growth and bee health is very interesting. So I definitely recommend listening to his podcasts or lectures. They're out on YouTube. And a fun fact for all of you Star Trek nerds, the mycelium drive was named after Paul Stamets. So now you know.
That is pretty cool. And you know what's funny is after I said how much I hate mushrooms, and then you made them sound super awesome, a part of myself was like, if you like mushrooms so much, why don't you go marry it? I got all petty about it.
Yeah. Maybe I will.
Oh no.
Yeah, so that's the staff of Osiris, which I thought was interesting. Very parallels the caduceus, but with the pine cone imagery. I have one more that I want to show you guys, and we're talking about the Vatican, right? So, oh, and of course, hold on, there we go. Boom. Share.
You know,
right?
Gordon Ramsay loves mushrooms, but I'm looking at a bunch of pictures. Mm-mm.
Yeah, and so this is the pine cone statue at the Vatican, and you know, I don't know if the pine cone doesn't mean anything. It is very odd that we dedicate so much time to the pine cone.
Yeah, now we got peacocks in here. What the F?
Yeah. Two peacocks facing a giant copper pine cone.
What if it's just a trick by aliens? They're just like, let's just plant the symbol there and let them figure out the meaning.
Right.
This
It's just
is
like the
hilarious. Yeah.
yeah, the obelisk. We're like, what does it mean? And yeah, the pine cone is this sort of similar thing. I just think it's interesting, and obviously, I was going to pull up some Angkor Wat pictures, but apparently some of the temples, the tops of the temples have this sort of imagery where it looks kind of like a pine cone at the top of the spires. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And there was something else.
Apparently,
Yes.
this pine cone, it's called the Fontana della Pigna, which is the pine cone, but it
Yes, the fountain of the pine.
originated the Fountain of the Pine. Yes, and it's a former Roman fountain that was moved there. So it has a
so there we get the Dionysus and Bacchus imagery again. So maybe this was a shrine to Bacchus at one point.
Oh no, it stood near the Pantheon next to the Temple of Isis, and it was moved to the courtyard of the old St. Peter's Basilica during the Middle Ages, and then moved again in 1608 to its present location at the Vatican. People really love this statue.
What's the story on what's happening underneath the pine cone?
Good question.
People.
There's a
Can I enhance?
Zoom and
See them
enhance.
pixels.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
pixels, just a mess of pixels.
Obviously, what's happening.
Yeah. Can you tell? Can you tell? It looks like somebody's being pulled by the hair. Like,
how much do you want for that fountain? I will buy now.
Honestly, this looks like 1998 porn.
You're just waiting for it to load, right? Just hoping.
Do you want to hear something crazy? In his Divine Comedy, Dante describes the size of the head of the giant Nimrod by referencing this exact fountain.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, his face appeared to me as long and large as is at Rome the pine cone of St. Peter's.
Dante even knew. He knew.
Yeah, that's an old fountain. Jeez,
it is an old fountain. Yeah, can you imagine? And you know what's interesting too is that I this isn't really apropos to the episode, but there is an obelisk in Central Park that was moved from Egypt to Central Park.
What?
And yeah, it's a really interesting story apparently, and they did this like in the 1800s when like it had to be shipped on a ship, and like
wow,
it took like the whole town to move the obelisk into Central Park. It's pretty astounding, actually.
That is insane. That's crazy. Well, that's just like there's another statue of the Lady Liberty,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like a French guy. Yeah.
Well, there's a sister statue. They're yeah, because the French gave us the Statue of Liberty. So, so with all of that pine cone imagery still resonating in your brain, I wanted to bring up the last couple questions I have for you guys before we wrap up. Now, I was thinking about this, and I'm trying to think about the significance of the pine cone and the imagery. And I was thinking, what if the pine cone imagery is like about panspermia?
What?
And the concept of aliens or intelligence seeding Earth. Because if you think about the pine cone and its symbolism, what does a pine cone do? Well, it opens up and it disperses seeds everywhere. And that's how the pines propagate. And it's interesting that they stay closed until they drop and then they open up. And they disperse the seeds. So I was thinking about this, and if you have the Anunnaki who apparently really loved pine cones, perhaps that's an analog for the concept of alien panspermia.
I just dropped my howlite. Sorry for the dramatic sound effect. But no, that's a theory for sure. I've heard that one before. And it makes sense because like humans, you can it's like, what is it, the missing link? We still haven't really figured out how we accelerated so quickly. So yeah, plus like I don't know how we survived. Like, we're so weak. Like, how did we survive nature for so long? I understand the theories and stuff, but I just still, there's a part of me that's kind of like, I don't know. I could get behind the we're not of this earth theory a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. And it's fun to think about for sure.
It is fun. Yeah.
I can definitely see it.
Why not?
Well, I mean, like, look at like us. We like to experiment on animals, on rats and mice. We that's how we learn. That's how we make scientific breakthroughs. All that stuff. So why is it so far fetched that some advanced intelligence do the same to us?
Right. Yeah.
And why wouldn't they seed knowledge to see what happens, to see how it blossoms in our species versus theirs, and maybe have to curtail it a bit when we start blowing up half the planet with nuclear bombs.
Probably.
They like when the touch gave in, but no, I can see it. I find the pine cone, it may be like something where it was like a symbol that only humans could really grasp. It was the closest thing for them to communicate with us in some sort of visual form where we got it. I can see that as well, because we do like our symbols, we do like our patterns, and if you have alien technology, I think that might break your brain a little bit if you're not preparing for it in a way.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just easier to draw a pine cone instead of some seeding device.
Yeah, maybe. Well, and I think the other explanation, which I probably think is much more likely, is that maybe perhaps the pine cone is symbolism for consciousness itself. And so the concept of the pine cone opening up and spreading is kind of like the concept of humans reaching consciousness and disseminating their consciousness wherever they go, because that's kind of what we do, is we spread our consciousness around, we spread our ideas around, we spread our thoughts around. And there's definitely a heavy symbolism with the pine cone and spreading. It's all about leaving its biological material as for as much as it can, for as far as it can.
Growth in the natural Fibonacci rabbits multiplying kind of way. Ideas multiply like rabbits, I guess.
Yeah.
And that does.
Oh, sorry, Ayla, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna go the dark route where I'm like, and if you think about it, and they're just like treating us like livestock, and aliens just said, "Oh, let's put the humans on Earth and let them populate, and we'll just abduct them from time to time, or cull the herd, so to speak." You know that theory?
Planet.
Yeah.
It's prison planet theory. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where that came. Like, is that only like internet conspiracy theories, or is there like a movie about that too?
Well, technically, the ancient Sumerians believed in a prison planet because they believed the Anunnaki came here and genetically engineered us and used us for our gold, I believe, because their planet didn't have enough gold in its atmosphere. So they something along those lines.
No,
but yes,
you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, Aussies would be happy if the whole planet was a prison planet.
Yeah, they'd be like, finally, you know how it feels. Jeez.
Yeah, like, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is crazy that back in the day we would just ship people to other continents.
Oh, yeah.
Wild. No, I mean, but the pine cone spreading knowledge too. I mean, there's a lot of symbols for spreading knowledge, like a wildfire spreading, for example. So, but I can like tied to Dionysus, tied to that life thing. Fire is privileged and like different than life spreading, obviously. Uh, so yeah, I can see where like it's just a simple symbol, but I do
Mhm.
like the idea of aliens coming down and giving us knowledge,
Yeah, I do too.
like Book
I
of
think it's
Enoch style and all that. It's great.
yeah. It's really great mythology, and it makes it a hell of a movie. So unless you
Yeah.
make Prometheus, then that's
Just
it.
don't run in a straight line. All right, just don't run.
Seriously.
Run in a straight line. Yeah, exactly. Go to the left or the right, and you
You're
will.
talking. Yeah.
It's like some of those people that get hit by trains. Sometimes you're like, you can just jump left or
Get out of
right.
your car. Yeah.
Yeah, like why?
Every Final Destination movie.
Yeah.
Seriously. What a craziness. Well, that's all I've got for you guys. I hope that you enjoyed this one. Do you have anything before we wrap up that you wanted to mention?
I have one question, Nick.
Do it.
What color is your aura?
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't answer
Yeah.
that question. That is a very good question. Honestly,
Good question,
I
Mike.
don't know. I
Mhm.
think like if I were trying to guess, maybe it's like pea 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 yellow or vomit green, maybe.
All right, now I'm convinced you're one of the aliens experimenting on us.
100%. That was such a.
It's
But,
a
but,
it's
but
a
I get a
human
green
aura.
aura off you
It's a
for sure.
human colored aura.
Whatever you think it is.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I mean, like I gravitate towards greens and purples a lot, but I don't know if that's what I reflect. I'm not really sure. I've never had somebody comment on my aura before, so
I grab.
maybe if I meet somebody that can see auras, they'll let me know.
You
They have
tend to click
apps
in with
now.
people a lot.
Mhm.
Like I want to see like an indigo type thing.
I could deal with that. Yeah, I like those colors. I like deep, rich colors, and yeah.
What's
So I mean,
interesting, I
yes.
could see you being indigo in like public settings, but I think your base state is a green, like a bright green.
Okay. Well, I'll take it. I mean, it's better than taupe. I could have said taupe. So
Taupe.
yeah,
What color is taupe?
taupe is like the color of like a
Poop.
hospital wall. You know, Like,
Quite calming.
yeah.
Looks like what green is. It looks like a calming color they put in like
Mhm.
insane asylums, depending on the
That's
green.
true. That's true. Next time I meet a crazy person, I'll just hug them and maybe they'll be sane again.
Oh,
Yeah,
Sweet.
that's all
or
the
it's that
world needs,
easy.
more hugs.
It
Anyway,
does need more hugs.
now that we're totally just talking S.
Well,
So
okay. I have a thing to say though.
okay.
When it comes back to the third eye,
Hmm.
are there anything that you guys do to try to open your third eye or bring awareness to it or anything our listeners might be interested in looking about?
Fantastic question, Ayla. Thank you. I think that for me, meditation was definitely doing it. Interestingly enough, meditating on grass is really kind of cool because if you keep your eyes closed enough long enough, and you really get into that meditative state, when you open your eyes, you will see the energy pattern of the grass, and it is pretty wild. I will tell you that because after you open your eyes after having them closed for about an hour and you look at the grass, you will see like this golden energy that comes off of it. It's really kind of trippy. But
Well, and you're earthing while you do that too.
yeah, definitely. But definitely Qigong, if you're interested in that, folks, look up on YouTube. It's really simple. It's like a 20-minute exercise you can do. It's called the 8 brocades of Qigong, and that's Qigong.
Two words.
2 words or 1 word, it doesn't matter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it can
I
be
thought
one.
it was always two.
Yeah, so look up the 8 brocades, and it's like this little 20-minute exercise you can do, and it doesn't take a whole lot of strain. It's very much kind of about just moving the body. And I've definitely found that type of stuff helps a lot. So yeah, that's my answer.
Nice. Mike, how about you?
Meditation helps for sure. I guess like when I started, because initially I didn't really have much belief or faith or anything about the third eye. I thought it was kind of silly hippie type things. Like there's definitely a gain you get from meditation and kind of opening this thing and being able to see what's hiding in between words and stuff like that. But the first time I was able to achieve it was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast with James Maynard Keenan. Then after that, smoking a lot of weed and then listening to Tool and meditating.
Tool.
Yeah.
There you go.
Total's a
Interesting.
great band. And James Maynard Keenan is a spiritual guy. Like,
I'll have to look him up.
it's doing like the 2012-13 podcast, somewhere around there.
Ooh.
Maybe later. But that's the way I kind of got into it, and then separated, of course, from the weed and start meditating more. But psychedelics are psychedelics. Psychoactive drugs, they can help with the third eye as well, if dosed properly.
Right. And be responsible, please. And don't do it, actually. Just don't.
Just give it to me. I'll do it for you.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. Mike will consult for you.
Yeah. I will talk to the gods and the spirits.
That's right. That's right.
But also, if you live in LA County, guys, you do get a free subscription to Headspace this year, which is a mindfulness meditation app. And they're offering free subscriptions during the pandemic. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of meditating too, and I think it can be tough because people have what's called like a monkey mind where you think a lot. So sometimes if you have a hard time focusing and quieting and finding that stillness, which you can move through to feel your third eye, definitely try those guided meditations. Like I said, they're free to everyone in LA County. You can also go online and find a lot of mantra meditations or use mala beads. I have a set, 108 beads, and you pick a mantra like Shanti, Shanti, Shanti Om, which translates into like peace. And you would just repeat it out loud or in your mind and move through each bead. And it takes about like 40 minutes, I think, to go through all of them if you really like focus on it, or especially if you say it out loud. But like Nick said, if you just kind of fixate on that or quiet your mind, when you open your eyes again, you do find that there's this, like a glow. And it's not like you can see the auras of everything. I think it's just that you're so in the moment that you can appreciate what's always been there.
Mhm. That and Tuvan throat singing.
Oh, yes.
If you're into a psychedelic experience without the psychedelics, just sit in your room and turn off all lights and then put on a video or YouTube of Tuvan throat singing, and you'll have a psychedelic experience for sure. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good way to go if you're interested in a crash course. But yeah, so well, thank you guys. I appreciate both of you. Thank you for listening, and yeah, thank you guys for listening to us as well. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you want to give us a follow on Instagram, we are at Exofathom. On YouTube, we are also Exofathom, and on Facebook, it's Exofathom. Feel free to hit us up if you have any answers to the questions that we posed in this episode. Please let us know in the comments. Just let us know how you felt about it anyways. We always appreciate the feedback, and we appreciate every one of you listening. We really do. We count all of our views and we hold them with pride, even though they're in the handful. We definitely appreciate the people that find this interesting, and we hope to continue to bring you guys really great content. So I guess if that's it, I'm going to thank my co-hosts Ayla and Mike. Thank you guys so much. And
Thanks for having us.
yeah, of course.
Thank you.
And you guys, let's see. Okay, yes. All right, Cognonauts, you stay out there, and we will catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Later.
Peace.